Okay, according to this, we're live. We're live, sometimes due to, I don't know, I tend to blame it on my connection speed, but it could be the technology I'm using. Sometimes words get jumbled together even worse than my normal speaking, I've noticed that more often than not right at the start. So I'm just waiting a second here while I ramble unimportantly. But we're live. All right, so let's flash this video into existence. We'll big bang this video universe into existence with fully formed universe where we've recently watched the Orville and something that passes for Star Trek. And we're going to talk about it and other things. So let's flash this video into existence. Boom! There we go. There we go. There we are. Yeah, there I am on screen. Yeah. Yep. That's my intro. Not very impressive, and it's just, as always, just playing peekaboo with the camera. Cause high-tech video intro. Cause I'm live, and when I'm live, you get the high-tech intro. You get the high-tech intro. This is so high-tech, it's not just electrically generated. It's not just the result of electrons doing things inside of a computer. No, this is electrons reacting to light. The electrons, and there's also protons and neutrons, reacting to light. You are getting the full interactivity of the electromagnetic spectrum in a piece of cardboard. Yes, you are seeing photons bouncing off of electrons and going into the camera. Yeah, we're doing a high-tech game of peekaboo because I really don't know. It's just what I do. If this was one of my other videos if this wasn't live, if I pre-edited this, you would have had an intro that either started with the universe flashing into existence, or possibly the video flashing into existence with a car with car headlights or something like that. And this kind of flashes everything into existence because this can obstruct the camera with the mighty power of trillions of electrons absorbing, blocking, and diverting photons. Yes, we're manipulating the electromagnetic field with a little piece of cardboard. Yeah, well, that's gone on too long, and my intros often include put this little piece of cardboard away. Where the hell did I keep it? Somewhere in here. Wasn't there? Wasn't it? Okay, there it was. Yeah, all right. Yeah. All right, there we go. Putting that stuff away. Yeah, and many of my intros involve a flying car, so here's the closest I've seen the Autobots come to creating a Cavalier. So, yeah. It seems to be more based on a Cobalt, but it's not exactly like a Cobalt. And very often I'll have a If this was a fully edited video, I would have had a car fly in and blast something, transforming it into the most appropriate version of the video title or video series title or whatever. Anyway, this is Unimultiverse Live Video Logs. UMV LVL. Unimultiverse Live Video Logs. And basically talking about what's portrayed in media. That's my gimmick, and so we're peering into the universe of Star Trek and the Orville and other stuff worth talking about. We're peering into those universes by staring at a television screen. Yeah, and then talking about it later. Am I well rested? No. Am I sufficiently caffeinated? Not yet. But we're doing it live. All right. So last week, almost a full week ago, as according to my watch, apparently it's Wednesday. Almost a full week ago, we had a great episode of the Orville. Thoughtful, intelligent, A lot of little things going on in it that all kind of work well together. The concept of being remembered after you're gone, ideas of being emotionally attached to almost like an image or perfect wording for that is not coming to mind. You know, like the most recent episode of the Orville, once again, was incredibly thoughtful, very well done. I believe this one was actually written by Seth MacFarlane himself. And whether they're written by Family Guy staff members or Star Trek Enterprise staff members, either way, they're writing some pretty damn good science fiction. And just kind of like how around the time The Simpsons went down the toilet at the end of the 1990s, many of the people involved with that show seem to go on and make an amazing show called Futurama. Family Guy went down the toilet, but it kind of came back a bit. But every now and then, it just kind of wobbles back. You know, sometimes it goes back to being halfway flushed down the toilet. But Family Guy did manage to make a bit of a comeback from time to time. You know, they can pull it off. Sometimes, actually, surprisingly, American Dad I find got better than Family Guy. And when American Dad first started, it's like, meh, this will never be as good as Family Guy. It's like, well, Family Guy went downhill, and American Dad kept coming uphill. But I'm getting off topic because I'm supposed to be talking about the Orville. And, well, actually, we all want to talk about the Orville, so let's get Star Trek Discovery over with. That thing that kind of passes as Star Trek. And, yeah, I'd rather talk about Star Trek than Star Trek Discovery. Often when I make a title referencing Star Trek Discovery, I don't use a Star Trek font. I could use a Star Trek font, but it's not really Star Trek. Yeah, it's just kind of not. It gets downgraded to a Star Wars font sometimes. And I don't really know what the title card for this will look like because all I did was take a snapshot. But if I re-upload this anywhere other than YouTube, you know, I'll probably, in that circumstance, I'll probably create a more complex title card for it. But you know what? I think this is off to a start that is not as lame as I could end up. So I'm going to be content with this. And my thumbnail I had for start. So what could I talk about other than Star Trek Discovery or the Orville? Well, real Star Trek. In fact, I wanted to it's my intention to make a more complex video talking about this, but I've been noticing more than one person trying to rationalize how Star Trek Discovery, just a cat making noise over there, and some of the audio quality in general might also be downgraded by an electric heater going on in the background over that way and around the corner. Yeah. Anyway, what I was talking about before the cat distracted me. So many cats. So many cats. Was a theory going around to try and rationalize how absurd Star Trek Discovery appears when treated next to Star Trek the original series, is the idea that First Contact created a new timeline that is separate from what we've seen in Star Trek the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. And now I was distracted by a bird flying by the window over that way. Yeah, I'm distracted. Anyway, the idea was that Star Trek First Contact created a new timeline separate from what you see in Star Trek the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, which resulted in Star Trek Enterprise, and then all this crazy-ass weird technology in Star Trek Discovery, which, well, except for their usage of force fields, I would consider it aesthetically different, but I don't think it's more advanced, personally. But some people, you know, can't rationalize it. And personally, I don't think it is rational. I don't think their aesthetic choices in Star Trek Discovery are rational. I don't think it's more advanced than the original series, except for the fact that they've gotten force fields holding the atmosphere in their shuttle bays, you know, like will that be like 2 decades early? Um, well, 2 decades earlier than the Constitution class starships are supposed to get that, and the Constitution class starships are supposed to be the ships of the line, and so yeah, sloppy writing there. The holograms are just absurd. They're not advanced. They're just absurd. Um, so fuck that shit. Whatever. No, but that idea that it's a whole new timeline, and that doesn't work. It doesn't. First Contact. When I watched First Contact, I wondered, are we going to get a new Star Trek timeline as a result of First Contact? And technically, it did change the timeline. So there should be a timeline where First Contact never happened as portrayed in the movie Star Trek First Contact. And that original timeline would have events similar to Enterprise, similar to the original series, similar to Next Generation and so forth, and definitely similar to what we've seen in Star Trek The Next Generation, Q-Who, and Best of Both Worlds, but probably not the other Borg encounters, because, as early as Star Trek Voyager, we realized, if we were paying attention, we're already viewing a timeline changed, and perhaps after the original change it may have become a predestination paradox, a timeline changed by the time travel events of First Contact, because Voyager referenced it twice, that the Borg were involved with human First Contact, and the Borg were aware of all of that. Yeah. So, which means either the Borg did successfully get off a signal when Picard and Worf and disposable Ensign New Guy shut down the deflector dish before the Borg could turn it into a transmitter capable of sending a signal back to their homeworld. It seemed like they destroyed it quickly enough that the Borg didn't get off a signal. In which case, if that's true, then that was not how the Borg got the message back to the collective that allowed people to realize what happened at First Contact. And plus, at that point, the First Contact incident wasn't already over with, which would mean that the Borg that were freezing to death in the Arctic that crash landed there, their implants must have been still active, and recording what the Borg were doing, because they have a hive mind. And then that information most likely was transmitted back to the collective in the episode of Enterprise called Regeneration, where Archer goes up against a mysterious group of cyborgs that were frozen on Earth and reactivated. And they directly those cyborgs directly successfully send a signal to the Delta Quadrant using the equipment that they've managed to upgrade at the time, which it's predicted will get to the Delta Quadrant in about 200 years. And then 200 years later, colonies start disappearing in the neutral zone, or near the neutral zone, on both the Federation and Romulan sides of the neutral zone, as the Borg come looking for the location of that transmission. And then you have other incidences, such as Iborg and Descent and so forth, all that wonderful stuff where Picard actually gets a little more used to the Borg, and which makes it kind of awkward that in First Contact that he still seemed to have a lot of emotional issues with the Borg. But I suppose, he could have unresolved issues. It just seemed to be resolved, but whatever. Basically, what I'm saying is, as early as Voyager, we knew that the timeline had been changed by First Contact, and we were already seeing it. As for whether or not we were seeing that timeline in Next Generation, well, when we finally see how the Borg sent that message back to the collective, because Enterprise is taking place in the timeline changed by First Contact, it's pretty strongly indicated that the reason why the Borg were snooping around in Federation and Romulan space was because of that message sent in Enterprise that was going to take about 200 years to get to the Delta Quadrant. So, if you use first contact to split the timeline and make an excuse for how Discovery could exist, you contradict Enterprise and you contradict Voyager, and it also makes Next Generation a little harder to work. Although some people had a problem with how some human scientists knew about the Borg in Voyager at a time when nobody should know about the Borg. Now, the thing is, the Federation, I mean, obviously, it stands to reason, based on the information in Next Generation, there should have been rumors about the Borg that people would be studying and looking into if they were fascinated in strange and dangerous alien life forms. Because Guinan species, the El-Orians, have traveled to Federation space. Many El-Orian refugees went to the Federation. You can't say that their homeworld was destroyed by the Borg and no information was recorded about the species of very human-looking humanoids that come from a far-off world destroyed by an amazingly powerful race. You can't say none of that would have been recorded by the Federation. None of their... Nothing, would have been recorded of that. No, there would have been word coming from alien species. It wouldn't have been first-hand word, but the Federation would have had knowledge of the Borg to some degree. Because El-Orians were apparently coming to Federation space as early as the time period of Kirk. And actually as early as before the Federation had warp drive, because Guinan knew Mark Twain, and I think at that point the El-Orian homeworld may not have been destroyed yet, though. But anyway, the timeline works out. First Contact did change the timeline, but turns out we were already viewing it. So yeah, that idea doesn't work. Although the temporal Cold War could have monkeyed things up a bit. And then we get the most recent episode of Star Trek Discovery. You can watch Star Trek Discovery, and if your eyes don't bleed and you don't vomit too much, you might come away with a story. And the best anesthetic for dealing with Star Trek Discovery would be, a phaser set to stun. Below setting 1, setting 0.3, something like that, Yeah, maybe setting 0.25, a quarter setting, 1/4 a full stun, just a little bit of jolt to dumb yourself down, to accept what's going on the screen with Star Trek Discovery. Because that thing that supposedly passes for Star Trek. Yep, I'm not well caffeinated enough to deal with this. But, alright, so, the second last episode of Star Trek Discovery, which I actually recorded a video of myself ranting about, but I didn't do it live, so I didn't get around to editing it, so it's not up and in existence, but you know what, it is my actual thoughts on that episode, so maybe I will upload it eventually, and just add it to my collection of thoughts on Star Trek Discovery. Why would I talk about a show that I hate? I don't hate Star Trek Discovery, actually, but I have a lot of negative to say about it. It is pretty painful to watch. Because I like Star Trek, and talking about Star Trek when I started talking about media was definitely something I was going to talk about. And then along comes Star Trek Discovery. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about, but not much of it is good. No, it's not good. Alright, so we already had the episode prior to the most recent episode, the second last most recent episode. We had the episode where they go to the Section 31 headquarters, even though Section 31 isn't supposed to have headquarters, because by their nature they're supposed to be completely decentralized, and they're basically just a group that works within Starfleet, that works against the rules of Starfleet, doing it in secret, and for some reason, they have a base. They have a base, and for some reason, everybody seems to know about them. That said, in all fairness, it could just be the select number of admirals we happen to see. Maybe Spock's father, Serac. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing words right now. Spock's daddy went and found out about them too, because he knows all about them. They treat them like they're the fucking FBI. You know, Pike could have uncovered them somehow, and it was kind of alluded to, though never truly proven, that well, I shouldn't say the Crossfield class, but the particular starship named Discovery, that happens to be a Crossfield class, the ship Discovery is presumably a Section 31 ship. There were kind of hints of that in Season 1. And the fact that everybody on the Discovery knows about Section 31 could be another... could be... Even then, it's kind of lame. Everybody knows about Section 31 on the show. I mean, and they don't treat it like it's a mystery that was something that they uncovered that nobody will believe because the Federation isn't supposed to do shit like that. Section 31 has been used very, very wrong by this show. And it's kind of like... There's something I've said before, and I'll say it again. Over the years, many writers have said that... and I don't often hear it about Section 31, but I've heard it about the technology. Something about... Or the philosophy. That say... Well, you know, with the rules that Gene Roddenberry put in place and how advanced the technology is, it's very hard to write things. We can't write petty characters that squabble about everything. Well, we don't know how to write drama. We're doing that. And what? With the technology, we can't realistically have a firefight. We just have to dumb it down and to make it look like a firefight that we want on the screen when people start firing phasers and disruptors, you know. And to which I think... Fuck you, you're writing on the wrong show. Go write for shit like Battlestar Galactica or something, which one of them that has made those complaints went off and did and was very successful at it. It has its own audience. I thought the show was hot garbage. Hot dumpster fire garbage. Hot dumpster fire garbage near a nursery school full of old diapers and... Yeah, I despise Battlestar Galactica. I despise it more than the worst episodes of Star Trek Discovery. I despise it worse than that abomination Star Trek 2009. I despise Battlestar Galactica more than Ghostbusters 2016. I despise Battlestar... I fucking hated Battlestar Galactica. I kind of watched it out of curiosity because it was often spoken about in the science fiction media, but goddamn, I couldn't stand Battlestar Galactica. I hated every fucking character on it, and I remember at one point I thought to myself, you know what? The Weasley asshole Belfastar might be the most sympathetic character on the show. Because everybody else is such a pathetic asshole that I just want them all to die. I wanted the Cylons to wipe them out. I was curious how the fucking show was going to handle the idea of humans somehow. Because we know humans evolved on Earth. And you know that in a science fiction show today, there should be a somewhat realistic portrayal of Earth. So how were they going to handle, you know, humans finding the lost colony of Earth? Well, I thought it was a pretty half-assed job they did, but whatever. I could compare it to some stuff done in Stargate, but I think Stargate handled it better. Fuck Battlestar Galactica. Fuck it with a rusty iron rod. Fuck it. I'm not doing the algorithm any favors by cursing about Battlestar Galactica, I don't think. And there's probably a lot of Battlestar Galactica fans that, nobody's watching anyway, so they're not going to get mad. But goddamn, I hated that show. I also hated Alias and Lost, and then J.J. Abrams was involved with those shows, and it's like, hey, he's giving Star Trek. They're like, oh god, no. Yeah. But anyway, Star Trek Discovery. I was trying to talk about Star Trek Discovery, and it sucks, so I started talking about other stuff that just sucks. Star Trek Discovery. Yeah, we already had the previous episode on the Section 31 base where the character Ariam, which they actually managed to make Ariam an interesting character, and they gave her a lame ass death. All right, oh, what I was going to say, yes. When people complain about, oh, it's so hard to write, we can't think of dramas that you could do when the characters are so perfect in this Gene Roddenberry created universe, or, oh, the technology's so advanced, it's just so hard for us to write a firefight, when phasers and disruptors can destroy mountains, and I'm like, fuck you, write for something else. If you're not competent to write for Star Trek, you shouldn't be writing for Star Trek. And this has happened in the past where people glazed over the world of Star Trek just to get in, just to try and write things that just don't fit the universe. There's been that ongoing argument within the Star Trek writing group. There's always been, like, for example, David Gerrold hating on Gene Roddenberry and just about anybody else involved with Star Trek. Harlan Ellison, I don't think I pronounced his name correct. He was responsible for that great script. Was it City on the Edge of Forever? Was that the... I'm pretty sure that was the title, but I could be mixing up the titles. You know, that great one with Edith Keeler, which, Kirk started to fall in love with her, but he had to watch her die and not stop it, otherwise the timeline would be ruined. And Earth would be ruined. Even though that she was a benevolent person, her position in history would have the accidental result of ruining everything if he saved her. That story. I mean, if you look at the original script, Harlan Ellison, I'm not pronouncing his name correctly, the guy who wrote it was very angry on how the script was changed. I believe it was changed by DC Fontana and Gene Roddenberry. But if they hadn't changed the script, it wouldn't have fit as Star Trek. He wanted Kirk to, in that short period of time, get so madly in love with this person that he was going to throw away the future to save her. He was going to destroy the United Federation of Planets to save her. There was going to be a fucking drug dealer on the Starship Enterprise in that episode. And it's like, dude, no, that's not a better script. Might be a great story in and of itself, and I like it when dark and different things get forced into Star Trek. I want to see the juxtaposition of light and dark in these stories. A universe that has such an optimistic look. I do want to see dark and complex and gritty things take place in those universes, to have that great juxtaposition of light and dark concepts. Want that. Love the idea. But some things just don't fit the universe, and his original script would not have made a very good episode of Star Trek. Just straight up. Might have been a great story, but not a good episode of Star Trek. Maybe somewhere else in the universe of Star Trek? Maybe, but not on the Starship Enterprise with that cast of characters. It is possible to get things wrong. And boy, oh holy fuck, do the Star Trek Discovery writers get Star Trek wrong. And I don't even think they can write, but I don't know what to say. Okay, so what I was trying to get to when I just ranted for, what was that, like 20 minutes on how bad Discovery is, getting halfway off topic because of how bad Star Trek Discovery is, just trying to grasp a verbal way of expressing how screwed up Star Trek Discovery is. Okay, at the end of the previous episode, before the episode I was about to talk about, they had made the character Ariam, if I pronounced her name correctly. They made her interesting. They made a Star Trek Discovery character interesting. That's an achievement. We should be proud of them. They've managed to crawl out of the playpen, and they pulled themselves up by the edge of the couch, and they're walking on their own. They made the writers of Star Trek Discovery made a character interesting. Good job, writers. Good job, writers. You've learned your ABCs. You're writers who figured out how to write a character, and in a single episode. What an achievement! In a single episode, for something as shitty as Star Trek Discovery, you made a character. You made a character interesting. Good job, Star Trek Discovery. You've earned a cookie or maybe a spoonful of tutti frutti baby goo, whatever you call that stuff you feed babies. Baby food, I guess. I don't know. They've earned a treat. Good job. But they were going to kill off the character. Now, this scene, I will say, could have been, if done competently, an interesting action scene where they did not kill off a character. And they could have killed off a character later. Or led up to them being killed some other way. Or better yet, they could have just written an entirely different scene to kill off the character. But what they did was, they had the computer virus that infected this poor person who was in an accident and was all cybernetically kept alive, and they must have brain damage because the computerized systems in them are even involved with memory recording and stuff like that. The computer virus that takes them over causes them to start hacking and communicating with the Section 31 database and doing horrible things that are going to end all life in the galaxy, blah, 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 whatever. And once discovered, they have a big kick-ass fight where you discover this person can kick a person across the room, defeat the security chief, but they still have the character Michael Burnham hold her own against her in hand-to-hand combat, because Michael Burnham is apparently a superhero, and God damn it. That was pretty absurd, but okay. Anyway, this person's super strong, maybe not as strong as Data, but we're dealing with some form of android strength, stronger than your average mere mortal. And somehow they get her, I don't remember, it's probably best if I don't, because I'd have to give myself a phaser shot to the head just to deal with the pain involved with remembering Star Trek Discovery too great a detail. But they get her trapped in an airlock. And the whole time this fight is going on, and it's communicated back to the Starship Discovery that this conflict is going on, I think the first thing that popped into my head was, why don't they beam her to the brig once they realize this character's gone bad? They beamed these characters into this Section 31 base. They beamed them in. Why don't they beam them out? There was no reference to any sort of shield preventing that. No scattering field, nothing like that. So the first thing that came to mind was it was a mistake. It was a mistake. The first thing that came to my mind when they discovered this person was doing bad was, why don't they beam her to the brig? And that's a mistake, because in the era of the original series, site-to-site transports aren't really a thing. You either beam to or from the transporter pad, and it is dangerous and risky to beam within the ship. That the transporter array is basically aimed away from the ship, and you can beam somebody inside the ship from the transporter pad to another location in the ship. You can do it, but it's a little bit more risky than beaming them down to a planet or to a space station or anything like that. So, they couldn't just beam her right to the brig. But that was the first thing that popped into my mind for about a second. And then I'm like, okay, they can't do that. But there's two different things they could do. One is they could beam her to the transporter room and have a security team ready to subdue her. That would be one. Or two, they could beam a security team over there to subdue her. What do? Nothing. They just let her do battle with the two other people they beamed over there. And anyway, they get her trapped in the airlock, and everybody agrees except for, oh, okay, why is this doing that? Okay, storage almost full. Yeah, but I'm not trying anything. This thing must be buffering. All right. Is this still working? All right, I was having a little technical problem there, which is a little bit concerning, but I think everything is still working fine. Might be a little, might indicate there's a problem buffering. I don't know. But the little message came up on the screen, and it was a bad sign. But anyway, all right, so they could have beamed over security team. They could have beamed her back to the transporter room and then had a security team ready to subdue her and drag her off to the brig or whatever was necessary to maybe, I don't know, secure her, turn her off, try to figure out how to handle the computer virus that took over her systems. You know, all the things they could do, they do nothing. They do nothing. They let their people fight her, and the fight doesn't go incredibly well because she has super cyborg strength. And then she gets trapped in the airlock, and everybody's like, "Well, you got to space her." To use a Babylon 5 term, you got to space her. You just got to do it. And it's like, okay. For some reason, they can't beam her back. There was no indication in dialogue why. They had no trouble beaming over there. Got to flush her out into space. They want this character dead, and they don't care if it makes sense how they get killed. It's just straight up. There's a conversation, and eventually, the character Michael Burnham or Burnham, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Burnham, I think. Notification. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I'm not sure why I got a notification for that. Yeah, they flush her out into space. Now, why couldn't they beam her from space? Well, they couldn't beam her in the first place. Why not? All right. Why didn't they send a shuttlecraft to pick up the body before she died in space? Death in the vacuum of space is not instant. Unless you hold your breath and you blow your lungs up, but, you know, I don't think she did that. And where she's a cyborg, she might have been able to survive that sort of thing anyway. I don't know. But they have her dying in the vacuum of space, reliving a happy memory. You know, and they didn't beam her out of the vacuum of space. They didn't even send a shuttlecraft. Hell, they always leave the back door on that fucking shuttle bay open. They always leave the door open, just the force field holding in the air. They always do. I mean, look at the ship. How often do you see the ship? And they're like, oh, there's the shuttle bay on the back of it. The door's open? Why don't they close the fucking door? You know, the door's wide open on the shuttle bay all the time. Why? I guess the force field is more efficient than having a door in place? I don't know. But the shuttle bay door is always open. If they weren't going to send a shuttlecraft, why didn't they just whip the ship around and have it ass end towards her with the open shuttle bay so she could drift into the shuttle bay? Maybe she would have bounced off the force field. Not sure how much pressure those things would put against a person drifting through space. Decompress the shuttle bay, let her drift in, raise the force field, recompress the shuttle bay. The Constitution-class starship can do it because it doesn't have a force field yet. You know, I mean, it's like so many stupid fucking things they could have done. They could have zapped her with a tractor beam and pulled her into the fucking shuttle bay. I mean, god damn, I mean, but they wanted the character to die, so let's just ignore the universe that this is taking place in. So the next episode started off with a fairly decent funeral for the character. We discover from the information that they copied from her or whatever that the neural signature for this person, for the Red Angel character that's been monkeying up the timeline throughout the series, is Michael Burnham. So they get Michael Burnham in on a plan to trap her future self. Well, I suppose if her future self is from an alternate timeline, then okay, that could work. But at the same time, it's like, Okay, so how is this timeline resolving? How is this working out? You want her to know how you're going to. You want her to know how they're going to trap her future version of her. If it's not a situation that created an alternate timeline and thus an alternate version of Burnham, um, its character should not know how you're going to trap her. Maybe that was why you have the scene where Spock. Yeah, one of the cats distracted me. Hey there, oh, little cat. Maybe that's why you have the scene where Spock refuses to let them stop killing her when it looks like they're letting it go too long. And it was a stupid plan. And but it worked. It worked at Star Trek Discovery. Stupid plans had a tendency to work in Star Trek Voyager. Stupider plans almost always work in Star Trek Discovery. Star Trek at its best, was Star Trek Enterprise, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine. None of those were perfect, but those were all amazing TV shows. Star Trek the original series was also great too. Good shows. Voyager, of all the Star Treks that have come before, I always felt Voyager was the most flawed. Felt very networked, felt very rushed, felt like there was conflicting ideas on what should be done with the show, and they went for a very middle ground, middle of the road, good enough for network television sort of vibe, with Star Trek Voyager. Star Trek Discovery makes even the worst of the Star Trek that came before look perfect. Looks like perfection. Spock's brain, the episode of the original series, the Threshold episode of Voyager, there's sweet perfection when compared to Discovery. And okay, this thing's doing that again. All right, looks like there was another technical error. I have no idea what this looks like being transmitted out there to the world. I'm not sure why I keep having that problem. Other than there's not a lot of space on the device that I'm using to record this with, but I'm not recording it. This is being recorded to the internet, and I'm not sure why every now and then. It must have to buffer every now and then, which appears to be causing problems. So I'm guessing perhaps even my audio might even be worse than usual. It might be skipping frames here and there and little bits of dialogue. I don't know. But Voyager's episode Threshold, Spock's brain in the original series, space gangsters and space hippies, and that Next Generation episode that looked like racist nonsense when they have an alien species that looked like an African tribe doing absurd racist looking bullshit in the Next Generation. I mean that episode, which was, just looked bad. I don't know what they were thinking when they wrote it, but it just kind of looked bad. Season 2 of Next Generation, had a lot of moments in it that came off kind of, weak. That really annoying episode of Deep Space Nine where the Klingons spend the entire episode grumbling about, we haven't had a victory. That episode, that was horrible. The last season of Star Trek Deep Space Nine was just depressing. So much Janeway trying to make an alliance with the Borg. A lot of bad moments in Star Trek. It's all sweet perfection when compared to Star Trek Discovery. Yeah. Damn. Okay. So they come up with a crazy ass trap for the Red Angel, and it turns out the Red Angel isn't Michael Burnham. Maybe it'll turn out there's more than one Red Angel. I don't know. So much for the theory that it was Spock changing the timeline. Of course, when we discover the outline of this character, the Red Angel looks kind of feminine. That kind of was out of the was kind of over and done with anyway. Now, I'm not sure what problems this will have, but I'm just going to bring up something here. And let's see. Now, I'm not sure how this is transmitting to the rest of the world, but there should be bubbles drifting around the screen. And in an absurdly childish, patronizing idea of, hey, want to look at the bubbles? I'm going to go off screen for a moment because I'm only functioning due to energy drinks. Energy drinks keeping me awake and just making me function. But they're liquid, and my bladder's telling me it's time to go fire the phase cannon down the porcelain wormhole. That's right, I gotta go Jaloja. As they say on Mockless, Jaloja! Whatever, I'll be back in a second. I'll try to make it fast. Alright, I'm back. Gonna get rid of the bubbles. Alright, so that's my thoughts on Star Trek Discovery that I just gave a moment ago. And now I just came back from going to the bathroom where I quickly used the toilet to urinate in, and then I used the sink to wash my hands really quickly. And there was a technical problem again, which will probably just come up again. So I'm going to make this quick. I have no idea if this is even working very well. And I'm not really all that awake anyway. But anyway, I was just commenting on, I just went to the bathroom as quickly as I could, urinated in the toilet, washed my hands in the sink, and I thought to myself, I'm doing this really quick. In fact, my hands are still kind of damp from washing them. Because I didn't take the time to dry them off, because I tried to hurry. I tried to be quick to get back to the running camera. And I thought to myself, you know what? I wonder if Star Trek Discovery writers would have urinated in the sink and then washed their hands in the toilet. Because when things are easy, when it's easy to do common sense things, they just do everything half-assed and backwards. I mean, the scene where they flushed Arium out into space could have been the end of an action scene that they could have made make sense. But they chose to kill off that character when all the technology, the Trek-nology that they supposedly have, should have allowed them to save her. But they didn't. You know, I'm going to take a shot of nasal spray. Life brand nasal decongestant. There we go. The good stuff. Keeping my sinuses from swelling shut and keeping out the oxygen. And for that matter, the nitrogen. Yeah. I don't know. I you know, I don't think it's fair to criticize writers all the time. Writers got to make a mistake here and there. You know, there's got to be a bad story every now and then. Wait, their seasons only go, what is it, like 13 or 14 episodes a season? Yeah, they should be doing better. They don't have to do, they don't even have to do a real season of television. They don't have to do like 26 episodes or anything like that. These are just little half-assed half seasons. They should doing like a half-assed season. They should throw their whole ass in, and well, we don't really need more Star Trek Discovery, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, every now and then writers are gonna slip. The production of television and or movies, or things are just gonna not work out perfect. Stuff will happen, but it's hard to account for how absurdly bad Star Trek Discovery is. And the fact that they're trying to make this a Star Trek show, I mean, it could be just plain old bad science fiction, but the Star Trek. It's like, no, this doesn't work as Star Trek. It doesn't work at all. Oh well. We still have the Orville. We have the Orville. And the most recent episode of the Orville was actually pretty great. In fact, one of the first things we see in the most recent episode of the Orville is Tim Russ, I believe is the actor's name, playing an archaeologist of sorts, who recently opened up a time capsule, and he's on board the Orville. I'm not really sure how this time capsule got into space, since it was a time capsule from 2015. But still pretty cool. So that's kind of a question. But basically, well, it might have been opened up on Earth or something along that lines, and then possibly they were transporting it to some other world to be analyzed. I'm not really sure the details on that. That was something I thought was kind of odd, and maybe hey, that's an excuse for me to rewatch the episode, because I definitely don't mind the idea of rewatching an episode of the Orville. The Orville is good. I say watch it on television, then rewatch it on a streaming service, and you can get it on the internet for free. Here in Canada, it's available on City Television. I recommend, after watching it on the network, watch it again on a streaming service. Probably Fox or Hulu. I think Hulu has it in the States. I don't think Hulu will let Canadians watch it. Not unless you have a VPN or something like that to trick them into thinking you're in one of the countries they'll let watch it. You know. But anyway, Tim Russ, that was cool. And, Voyager was not my favorite Star Trek. And, but you know what? With Star Trek Discovery, I can appreciate it for being a Star Trek show that gave me an ongoing series of stories that kind of work. And you know what? The character Tuvok, I like the character. And the actor that played him seems likable. So, it was a great moment of nostalgia seeing this guy on the Orville, the show that has the spirit of Star Trek, and every now and then has the nostalgia of Star Trek. But anyway, the whole plot of it was the time capsule is unveiled, and they find a cell phone, and they think of it as very interesting because there's like so much stuff, and there's going to be text messages and all sorts of messages and pictures in the phone. So this is a slice of somebody's life, and although there are still records from that time period, it's not that often that they get something like this that allows them to really analyze the demographics. In fact, not only is this a cell phone, you might see the reflection of another cell phone in the cell phone. Can you see that? Actually, I can, but actually at the resolution this is being broadcast at, I'm not sure if you'd be able to see it because it's limited by my connection speed and possibly also limited by the excess space in the phone, because every time it has to buffer a little bit, apparently it gives me a message about being low on space. And I often, one of the reasons why I do some videos live is because it's an easier, lazy way to do a video than managing space on my various devices for recording. So anyway, on the discovery of the phone, the character Gordon gets fascinated by the idea of it, and he sneaks away with the phone and creates a computer simulation of the people, or mainly the main person who had the phone and put it in the time capsule. With the great idea, it's like if the idea of being remembered, beyond one's own lifespan. That's an interesting concept worth thinking about. It's interesting. It's part of being a mortal. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, I've known oblivion is on its way. And although they tell you all sorts of nonsense and fairy tales, which even as a little kid you can realize they're kind of suspect, about how you'll continue to exist forever as a goat, you'll be uploaded to the afterlife realms, like it'll, and of course in this particular culture, one is heaven, the other is hell, and gotta obey the rules. So you get to the good one and don't get tortured forever in the bad one. And I'm like, well, either one of them sounds a hell of a lot better than oblivion. Because at least with eternal torture, that's something to experience. Nonetheless, you're told to, follow the rules, unless the government wants you to break the rules. You can be a murderer for your government. That's what gets us oil. That's what gets us this stuff. Oh, the good stuff. Oh, yeah, the good stuff. Oil. Yeah. Right now, they're trying to come up with excuses to invade and murder a lot of people in Venezuela so they can take the oil. Turns out they have more oil than the Middle East. That worked out real well for the Middle East, so not a good time to be in Venezuela. Good old oil. We're all screwed. Yeah. Well, I'm not in Venezuela. The people in Venezuela, I mean, it's like, you got oil under your feet? Well, there's some corporate interests and some governments bought off by those corporate interests that they're coming for you. They're coming for you. They're going to take it out from underneath you. Yep. But anyway, back to the Orville. Back to a better time and place. The future. Where the character of Gordon creates a simulation of that person and becomes emotionally attached to her. And to him, it's real because it is a simulation of an actual person who was alive. And everybody else thinks he's nuts and thinks it's creepy that he's spending all this time with a simulation of somebody that died, 300 years prior? Was it 400? I forget the time frame. I think it's actually farther into the future than Star Trek usually portrays. So yeah, like 400 years into the future. Damn, I forgot the actual time period of the Orville. Oh well. But I think it actually is roughly a century further into the future than what Star Trek The Next Generation portrays. But it's an entirely different universe with, different technological advancements. But hey, they both have a Saleya. Just one is spelled with an X, and where the Saleyan people live, and it's a very heavy planet, as opposed to the other Saleya, which is Mount Saleya on planet Vulcan. Yeah, alternate universe Vulcans. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. Yeah, he creates a simulation of someone. So they have successfully been remembered, which is pretty cool and interesting thought. I mean, think of how much experience you would put in like a little data device, like a cell phone, and all that life you record in there. In fact, I often look at these with old messages and pictures and just think, there's slices of life in there. A lot of slices of life in there. And this person's cell phone got them remembered centuries into the future, which is a very interesting concept and something fairly thoughtful. But you also deal with the character Gordon, who is emotionally attached to somebody who technically was a real person, even if he's just getting attached to a simulation of her. And everybody else thinks it's creepy and weird. Which, if you think about it, it kind of is. And it leads to interesting arguments. Ultimately, you gotta let it play out and see how things go. And of course, this is a simulation of an actual person. So for it to work properly, you can't just keep tampering with it, or it's just something you created. It's just your hologram of your own creation. Solid, physical hologram, like they have force fields behind the holograms in their environmental simulators, but nonetheless an advanced hologram of your own creation if you tamper with it. So for it to be a natural person, you have to let it play out according to the simulation based on the information. And he discovers that if he tampers with anything in it, when he realizes that this person's not going to be compatible with him because she's going to play out according to how history would have her play out. But if he tampers with that and creates a simulation just based on certain aspects of her life and remove things from it, it'll change who she is. And he has to come with terms with the fact that it's just a simulation. And as awkward as I probably just worded that, it's very thoughtful to see not only someone having a memory of them, getting part of their life preserved into the future and being remembered, something that to a degree everybody should want because you realize you're mortal. I mean, even as a little kid, I always wanted a video camera to record stuff because I knew stuff was constantly changing. The world was at a constant state of, it's kind of dying. What you have access to one moment is gone. There's lots of amazing images that are not always perfectly easy to remember. I remember as a little kid thinking how awesome it would be to have a video camera. And then in my teenage years, I actually managed to get one. That was a pretty good Christmas present. Thanks, Mom, for that. And you're hopefully not watching this. As though it matters, but just cursing a whole bunch, and I curse a whole lot anyway. But anyway, that was a good Christmas present. A nice thing that I got from my mother one Christmas was a video camera, but no, just the thought of putting something like that in a time capsule and being remembered so far into the future is a very thoughtful concept in and of itself, but then dealing with somebody who becomes emotionally attached to the image that's being remembered. But of course, it's just an image. But it's an image of a real person. There was so many levels of that were thoughtful. And even if it sounds simplistic and crude, and it might even sound like stuff that was done before, I personally could, if I were to spend time looking at it, I could find things that were done similar to that in other science fiction. In fact, I can't really think of a particular Voyager episode, although there is the one where the Doctor's reactivated after, which actually was a pretty good episode. A copy of the Doctor being activated by an alien civilization centuries in the future. What's that episode? Which was pretty cool, actually. But this feels like a concept Voyager would try and do a somewhat adequate job of. Well, this took this sort of idea, and I think the Orville did this better than Star Trek in the past would have. I really think the Orville took this basic idea, played it, and let it play through with the characters of the Orville, and it came out very thoughtful, very interesting, very natural feeling, and the show deserves a lot of praise for that. I mean, they did one hell of a good job with such a simple concept and made it a thoughtful, intelligent story. And they really deserve a lot of credit for that. I mean, this season, the episodes were all great. Season 1 was absolutely amazing, too. And for a lot of this season, they just kept managing to do an episode after another episode and just keep getting better. And I kind of think they hit their pinnacle and maybe even achieved the pinnacle of television um, when they when they did the two-part episode Identity. Uh, yeah, I mean that was pretty awesome, actually. Although a lot of the benefit to Identity is you had like a season and a half of backstory to lead up to it. Because if Isaac didn't mean anything to you, the episode wouldn't have meant as much either. But even if Isaac didn't, the first part of that, the first half of that episode, was damn creepy. Um, like when they find all the skulls on that planet in the first part of the episode Identity, the skulls underneath the city, and the bones anyway. I mean, that was a pretty cool reveal. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the show just keeps getting better. Apparently, it's going to be on break for about 2 seasons, not 2 seasons, 2 episodes, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. A period where we should have been getting 2 episodes. It's going to be on break for that. And I think after that, I think there's only like 2 episodes left of the season. It's still, as far as I know, it has not been officially renewed. Unless I missed some news. Maybe that could be breaking news right now. And it's kind of like Star Trek Discovery got renewed for season 3. That show's hot garbage, and it's getting renewed for season 3. Granted, it's a different situation. With Star Trek Discovery, you have the company CBS trying to pimp the Star Trek brand name. Not enough caffeine in my system here. You have CBS trying to pimp the Star Trek brand name to get people to tune into CBS All Access. And, well, it sucks. Now, some people say that the reason why Star Trek Discovery failed is you also have the Orville. And the Orville takes viewers away from Star Trek Discovery. I don't believe that. But that said, I do know what the Orville has done, which is it's an awesome and perfect coincidence, and I'm glad the Orville came out opposite Star Trek Discovery. If CBS had made Star Trek Discovery, and the Orville wasn't on opposite it, or wasn't on a different network and on at the same time, CBS would have said, you know what, people don't like Star Trek. They don't like this old optimistic shit. People don't want more Star Trek. That's an outdated thing. Sure, it was big in the 1980s and 1990s and supposedly revolutionary for the 1960s. But people don't want more Star Trek. People don't care about that kind of science fiction. That's the sort of attitude you would get if Star Trek Discovery had failed and there was no Orville. I know that's what you'd hear in all the online reviews coming from the corporately owned media who has interest in backing up their corporate masters and corporate allies who don't want to be shamed for falling on their face for making a shit product. It's like, I think it's comicbook.com is owned by CBS, and they always find positive shit to say about Star Trek Discovery when most people despise it. And it does have some fans, and if you like it, that's fine. I mean, I've seen some stuff in Star Trek Discovery that was enjoyable. It could have been better written, but I enjoyed seeing an Orion colony on the Klingon homeworld. To go to a place like that, and that was pretty cool. I liked the Walker class starship. I despise the Crossfield class starship that the Discovery is. I think that's a horrible design, but the Walker class starship was pretty cool. okay, the writing's bad. The writing's bad. That makes the biggest difference, though. You know, but it oh god, the writing's bad on Star Trek Discovery. But you know, there were little things in it I enjoyed, and if you overall liked the show, good for you. I mean, I'm glad for you. I find it hard to understand liking Star Trek Discovery, but it had its good moments. They were moments. Moments, unfortunately. I wish it had good episodes. But season 2, I mean, there was some good episodes, but even then, they weren't really strong by Star Trek standards. They were just good by Star Trek Discovery standards. This diminished expectations due to that show. But no, if not for the Orville, I know what a lot of the reviewers who don't care about Star Trek would say, and I know what CBS would be putting forward, and all the publications that are owned and or affiliated with them. It would have been straight up, yeah, Star Trek doesn't work anymore. Star Trek is outdated. People don't want that optimistic, outdated bullshit. And it's like, fuck no. Star Trek was loved for decades, and people still want more. And the Orville is catering to a Star Trek audience, an audience that wants a show with ethical characters, with a positive future, where humanity actually becomes something more ethical, and has allied itself with alien species that are also capable of being ethical and working together, and having like science fiction action adventure, and the telephone is ringing and I find that annoying, and I'm not gonna bother with it. Screw you, telephone. Screw you, telephone. Yeah, I'm not, just whatever. People want more Star Trek, and the Orville is excellent competition for Star Trek. Of course, it's not Star Trek. It's its own property. It's its own universe, and but it works as a parallel universe to Star Trek. But it's not the Star Trek trademark. It's a great show, and I love it, and I think a lot of Star Trek fans love it. And it prevents, and it came out at a good time because it prevents people from saying, well, Star Trek Discovery failed because nobody wants more Star Trek. Nobody likes that sort of storytelling anymore. You know, people would say that. People would say that if not for the Orville. I don't think Star Trek Discovery failed because it has the Orville as competition. I don't think Star Trek fans ever would have embraced Star Trek Discovery. To a certain degree, some Star Trek fans embraced Star Trek 2009, and that was pretty bad. But for the most part, it was the non-Star Trek fan that embraced it. It was just the moviegoers who just wanted a big, dumb action movie, and check out a big, dumb action movie. And to be honest, Star Trek Beyond kind of works as a big, dumb action movie. It's not really outright stupid, but it's not as smart as I would prefer my Star Trek to be. But Star Trek Beyond wasn't that bad. But Star Trek 2009 and Star Trek Into Darkness, those were dog shit stupid. I mean, I would say Star Trek 2009 was worse than Star Trek Into Darkness until you get to the point where they use Khan's blood as resurrection juice into Darkness. But all the stupid coincidences and dropping Kirk on that ice world in Star Trek 2009, I mean, we're dealing with garbage. Yeah. Scotty doing live animal experimentation on Admiral Archer's beagle. That's how he gets stuck with the shitty job he was doing. It's like, yeah, I should have been kicked out of Starfleet for doing live animal experimentation. You know, using your half-assed transporter bullshit that you were trying to pull. Bad stuff. Bad stuff. Bad stuff. Bad stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's all bad stuff. Anyway, I probably rambled on enough, but yeah, I don't. Look, if you can pull off the marketing achievement, and they marketed the hell out of Star Trek 2009. If you could pull off something like that, you could make money off of something like Star Trek Discovery. But you're not going to get Star Trek fans, and and with an ongoing series, I don't think you're going to get a lot of followers because Star Trek Discovery is not well written. They had some likable characters in the first season. Both Tilly and Saru seem to be good characters. They both feel kind of ruined in the second season, almost as if I'm not sure, like Saru, I called him Suru, like Sulu. Saru has undergone actual changes. I think Tilly, I just don't think I think they accidentally wrote Tilly interesting in the first season, and then when they tried to put her to use in the second season, I just don't feel as though it worked. So, I mean, there's hope for Tilly in a third season being interesting. I don't know about Saru, but at first I thought Saru was pretty cool. They actually did a good job of writing Pike as a character. They made him a likable character. And for the brief time she was on screen, number one was good. And the guy that played Spock, I mean, a lot of people were pretty cynical when with the new Spock when the guy was cast. But to his credit, he's pulling off like a Spock personality. I mean, the writing they've given him, not that great, but the actor, I mean, when I look at him, I don't think that looks like Spock. No, I mean, the Star Trek 2009, I thought they got Spock's look down good, and the actor was definitely able to play Spock. I mean, we all think of Leonard Nimoy. When I see this guy, I don't really think, I don't feel as though he looks as much like Spock, but it might be the beard, but I actually think this guy's got the personality down, and if I were to say somebody to play Spock in the future, I wouldn't suggest against this guy. I'm not overly impressed with a lot of the writing, but you know what? The way they wrote Spock wasn't as bad as I'm sure a lot of people thought it was going to be. So there's that. Yeah. But anyway, Ooh. Well, whatever I scan from this video, shorted out the PKE meter. Let's see what's going on now. All right, there we go. There. Yep. So I detect it's time to end this video. You never know what sort of temporally displaced It didn't properly turn off. It just shorted out. I went to turn it off, and it just shorted out. Yep. Weird creepiness on the internet. We're getting some weird anomalies, and it's overloading the PK meter. Come on, come on. No, just shorting out. Okay. Creepiness on the internet. Let's see. Yeah, well, there's creepiness on the internet out there somewhere. Alright, anyway. This is not... Maybe if I hold it away from the camera. No. Alright. PK meter sorted out. Yeah, you never know when there's going to be weirdos on the internet doing creepy things. And that's a joke I've been making ever since back in October, when most recent October, when just creepy monsters from a few neighborhoods over were apparently watching my videos, which whatever. But so I often like to check to see how much creepiness is out there with the PK meter. And, the PK meter sorted out. So that's a sign that something weird's going on the internet, and it's time to close down communication channels and raise the shields, because there's creepiness out there somewhere, and blah, 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 gotta shut down. I'm really not sure how to integrate that joke into this video, but the PK meter shorted out, and it wouldn't turn off properly. Something. Yeah, that's. Oh well. It was working earlier. It actually was. Yeah. I don't have a joke for that. I just get out the PK meter. Oh, telephone. It might actually be important. I don't know. Um, yeah, I'm gonna end this first. And you know what? I don't even know what I'm going with here. I don't even know what I'm saying. You know, I mean, this is just me rambling about Star Trek and the Orville, and whatever. Yeah, and you know, if you found this watchable, feel free to look for more of my videos. Okay, I should get that. Feel free to subscribe to me on Subscribestar. Look for me on YouTube and DTube and BitChute and all those wonderful places. I'm going to end this video now. And thank you and good night.